Okay, so the discussion here has just begun, but let's set the stage for you on this issue. So it turns out that this issue of announcing the presidential results from the constituency is turning out to be a political one. NASA has in the last week said there will be no election if the IBC proceeds and is successful with their appeal in the Court of Appeal on this issue. Let's listen to some statements that have been made by various NASA leaders over the past week on this issue.
On 4th of April, the High Court of Kenya, in a unanimous decision, ruled that the presidential election results declared at the polling station and the constituency level are final and cannot be overturned unless a court order is issued. This decision reaffirmed the provisions of the Constitution on finality of election results declared at the constituency level.
Sasa Jubilee imegundua kwamba hawatafaulu hata kidogo wakifanya mambo hayo. Sasa wameanza mbinu zao za kujaribu kuenda kotini na kubadilisha hiyo sheria ambao waliipeleka kotini na ikakataliwa. Na jaji mwenyewe mkuu wa mahakama akasema kwamba kura zote zihesabiwe katika constituency na hiyo iwe ni mwisho. We are saying no election. We are not boycotting. We are saying there will be, mark those words, there will be no election if that clause in the election law is amended.
All right, so what are your thoughts on that? At KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara, please use the hashtag checkpoint as we discuss this issue, both the legal and the political aspect of it, and whether this will be a deal breaker for the election come August the 8th. And I want to reintroduce my panel to you this evening. We have with us the man that went to court on behalf of his client over this very issue, Willis Otieno-Ocheng. Thanks for joining us on the show tonight. We also have Jennifer Shamala. It's good to have you after such a while.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Welcome back. It's good to have you back. And George Kegoro, who's the chair of the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Thank you all for coming. Willis, I think the obvious place to start is with you in terms of this clause. So. It's turning out to be political, but let's discuss the legal issues first, and also because some Kenyans are a little confused. Even when we put out this question on Twitter, they're talking about parallel vote tallying. But tell us about why you went to court on this issue and exactly what the court ordered.
One thing that you must first appreciate is that the Constitution of Kenya in Article 138 is very clear. It sets out the procedure for presidential elections. 138.2 provides that if there is a vacancy for the office of president and more than one candidate is nominated to vie, an election of president shall be held in each constituency. Plain, simple language. There is no need to interpret that. The Constitution obligates every constituency to hold presidential elections. That was our starting point. So we have 290 constituencies in this country. That is Article 89 of the Constitution. So each of the 290 constituencies must proceed to hold a presidential election. Now then go to Article 86 of the same Constitution. It is very clear. It sets out the conduct of elections. And it says, polling shall take place at each polling station, and the presiding officer shall at the conclusion count the votes and promptly announce them. So, in fact, the first tier is the announcement at the polling station level. Right. You count, publicly announce. Then you go the next tier, that's 86C. Each presiding officer is obligated to deliver the election materials and the votes to a returning officer. The returning officer will publicly again collate those results, tally them, and announce. So it becomes final, because at D part of that Article 86 is very clear. Article 86D talks about, upon the conclusion, is now safe storage, safe custody of the materials. So you read these two provisions of the Constitution, our understanding of it, which the court agrees with us, is that presidential elections are done at the constituency level, and the persons overseeing them are the polling station presiding officers named in the Constitution, and the constituency returning officers again named in the Constitution.
Right. Yes. So you went to court on this issue. Why is this important? Why is it important for you and your client that these parts of the law are upheld?
For my clients, if you look at the three of them, these are persons who've been involved in human rights issues in this country for a very long time. Yeah. And part of the work they do, and you realize a lot of violations of human rights occur around electoral processes. This case was informed, for example, by the events of 2007 and 2013, where my clients, when they were participating in these elections, they realized at some point announcements were being made at various constituencies, and they will capture this.
Right.
They have video cameras showing that. When the same results were being declared at the national level, there was a variance. They were different.
Okay.
So they came to me as counsel to ask me, we've observed this in this particular constituency. Look at what they're announcing at the national level. It's different.
Okay.
Where do we find our salvation?
All right. And yet, Jennifer?
I think it's important to put things into context and a historical context. And from the year 1996, the prominent discourse in this country with regards to free, fair, and transparent elections has been the constitution of the IEBC, or of the commissioners.
Right.
And we fast forward to last year when this petition was actually filed. It was filed in May of 2016. It's around the very same time that the opposition were demanding for the replacement of the then IEBC commissioners on various grounds. Facts of the Chicken Gate scandal and the fact that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption had not investigated and sent files to the DPP for the prosecution of the commissioners in this country, in spite of the fact that convictions had been secured in the United Kingdom. Now, we fast forward to this year, where we have a situation whereby we have an independent, a unanimously endorsed commission, endorsed by across the board in Parliament. Now, last year, I'm assuming it was a multi-pronged approach by the opposition that we would replace the commissioners and we would also ensure that we institute a public interest litigation suit in court. Having said that, I want to state something, and I want to read it from the Constitution and not quote it from up the top of my head. The Article 138 to 3C is very, very clear. It says that after counting the votes at the polling station, the Independent Election and Boundaries Commission shall verify and count and declare the result. And this is with regards to the presidential election. Now, I've read the decision in the case that Willis was the advocate. And a lot of the precedents that have been used has been with regards to parliamentary elections. There is a specific proviso within the Constitution that has an entire articles stating the election of the president shall be different. And why was the reason for this? I'm sure the reason for this article is because there was this issue of not trusting results coming at a constituency level. Now that we may, for whatever reasons, they've decided that actually this particular proviso will not suffice for us. And it is my considered opinion that actually what is happening is there's an attempt, when it's so clear, it is in black and white, that with regards to the presidential election, it shall be declared by the IEBC. And nobody is actually stressing that particular point.
All right. There's the talk of history, 2013, when results at the national and constituency level did not match. And, there was the talk that the action was by the IEBC at the Bomas of Kenya, which was the national tallying center. What would you say to that? Because perhaps they're saying this is to cure that situation, as well as other precedents that had been set before.
Actually, the issues in the petition of 2013 were issues of the biometric voter register failing, the issue of not being absolutely sure of what was the voter register and how many people were on the voter register, the issue of disabled people whose particulars could not be captured within the biometric being captured on another voter register. Indeed, in this very decision, they have said that they were not, because it was challenged. One of the preliminary objections that were raised by the respondents was that it was a review of the presidential petition. And they stated very clearly that it was not. The issue of declaration of results was never an issue in any of the 2013 petitions.
George?
Let's stay with history, where Jennifer has taken us to. Before the 2010 Constitution, we had the Constitution, the 1963 Constitution as amended at various points in time. And the amendments kept bringing the Electoral Commission of Kenya, ECK, to the center of elections. At Section 5 of the former Constitution places the election for presidential election at the constituency level. The unit for election under the former Constitution was the constituency in the same way as the current Constitution. So the consistencies between the two constitutions has been to regard presidential elections as being held and being determined at a unit called the constituency. So that is a consistency between the two constitutions, and that is a historical fact. Now, why do people feel that they can go against the Constitution and have an arrangement that is different? I guess for me, it is a question of exercising control rather than exercising duties that have been bestowed on them by the law. It is the idea that at the local level, you're probably not important enough to announce presidential results, so we will announce it at the higher level. But I'm also curious to understand what is the difference between the returning officer and the presiding officer and the IEBC? Who do they work for? They are IEBC. So you can't say, as Jennifer is arguing, that IEBC is the commissioners. Everybody that works in that system works for the IEBC. How could all these arguments that you couldn't declare results that you have generated because you're the one on the ground? It is actually a very strange argument that people in Nairobi at Bomas have got better information, have got better control, have got better knowledge to declare results they don't know anything about because they don't declare you to be IBC. You are IBC. Who are you working for, as a returning officer or as a presiding officer? At
the heart of this also is, a political issue. We've heard from NASA leaders on this matter. George, is this an attempt to perhaps alter the results that are announced at the constituency level rather than having them announced at the National Tallying Center? I mean, let's talk about the politics of this a little bit. Is NASA's fear grounded?
I think let's just again go back to history. In 2013, we were in the Supreme Court. There was a civil society petition alongside the Raila Odinga petition, and there was, of course, an alternative petition that was filed by people allied to Jubilee. Now, we had clips of results announced from around the country. The results, as declared in Makueni, were different from the clip from those ones that were finally declared at Bomas. No explanation was forthcoming. Results as declared in Nyeri were different in the clip from the ones that were declared in Nairobi. No explanation forthcoming. Results declared in Kericho, and they were the basis for an election petition, were different from the ones that were declared at Bomas. So, I mean, if we had the capacity to have a bigger capture of results across the country, those variations that have not been explained would have been more dramatic and more evident. So this case strikes at the heart of the accountability process for elections. Elections take place only at the polling station. They don't take place anywhere else in this country. That is the only place where you vote. And that is the only place where votes are counted. The rest of the places is adding up numbers. So why would you disempower people who have arranged for the election and counted the votes from declaring what the results are at their level?
Yeah, it's not me and my opinions that I am quoting here. That's precisely why I have brought this constitution. This is the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, and this constitution has a chapter on the conduct of the presidential elections, and it's very clear that the IEBC will declare the results. It doesn't talk about the conduct of members of parliament or of Senate, but specifically the presidential election. So the intent was extremely clear. But fast forward, we have a decision which is now in favor of Willis's clients.
Yeah.
And then we have the opposition turning around and saying that if it is appealed, then there will be no election. What the judiciary is one of the three arms of government. You accept the decision at the High Court, but you say that should this be overturned in the Court of Appeal, you will not accept it. Now, perhaps Willis will be better placed to explain to us what are the reasons and why is it that at an appeal they will not accept it within the same judiciary.
Let me explain this. First, Jennifer seems to be misadvised on what the issue is in this petition. This petition simply says the finality of the results. We are all talking about the finality at the constituency level. We are not saying IEBC cannot make an announcement. They can make an announcement, just like any other Kenyan can make an announcement. The only point that we are stressing in our petition is that once a constituency returning officer has declared those results, anybody is free to share them. The provisions that the IEBC was using, that is their regulations, they even stopped the media from disclosing results. They said you cannot even transmit provisional results. You have to wait to come to Bomas, capture them from Bomas, then you announce them to
So what
people.
you're saying is
So
that
what we are
this was
saying,
that it's final at that point.
at that level, yes.
But that if anybody wants to alter it, they would have to go to the
Go
High
to,
Court.
to the High Court to alter for that particular constituency. Then you come to Nairobi. IBC, and what she was reading for you, that talks about IBC will also still tally the other results because the chairman of the IBC in Article 138, I think it's 12, has a very clear role. At the end of this entire process, he will declare the result, not results. Result without an S, and that's very important.
Exactly.
The result without an S is the outcome, the winner of the elections. And if you look at the result declaration
Of the
form,
presidential election.
which was issued in the last election, it only names two people, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. No mention at all of even the number of votes which they received. So it is wrong for Jennifer to think that our case was about stifling IEBC, stifling the commissioners, stifling
I think
any other
we don't
Kenyan.
have- I wish
Let me
we
just
had-
finish.
yeah.
So the point is, what this petition simply says is that once you count at the polling station, you must announce it to the people. Once you count at the constituency, you must announce it. Then let everybody take stock. But the most important thing where we disagree with Jennifer is this. If it is announced at the constituency, that result is final. The person who is announcing, as George says, is an officer of IEBC. There is no IEBC better than any other IEBC. All of them are officers of this commission. On the issue of no elections, it is so clear. If Article 138(2) says a presidential election shall be held in each constituency, how clear can that be? If it is not held at each constituency, then there is no presidential
I think
election.
the issue,
Let me just
yes,
explain it.
yes.
The NASA team is simply saying that if the Court of Appeal were to say, for example, that we are not going to have this process as they are arguing it, then the architecture of Article 138(2) will be upset. There is no election.
So in your view, there will be no election?
There will be no election
But
because
Jennifer,
138 is clear.
Okay,
You
let's
do an
start-
election
yes,
at each
let's-
constituency.
let's
Yes,
allow
and
Jennifer
it may,
to
you know,
chime in.
the issue of the announcement, there was the issue of provisional results and final results.
results, yes.
There's the issue of tallying and verification. And that is what is very clear in Article 138C. Now, I don't want to split hairs here, but I think it is, how can we say that if the Court of Appeal should overturn or give or the Supreme Court for that matter, because what they're talking about, provisional results at the constituency level, it has been determined. It has been determined by the Supreme Court. In the Joho case, there's a case of George Wajoyi versus the Mathare case, it has been determined.
Yes.
It has already been determined. What has been said in that ruling, there's nothing new when it comes to the election of members of parliament. We're talking about the election of the president, the presidential
Can I explain
election.
those two cases?
Okay, we need to have
those two cases.
We need to have George to hold it just one moment, Willis. We need to hear from George on this issue. So, is this attempt by NASA leaders to say there will be no election, and Willis is saying the same thing? Is that an attempt at influencing the outcome of the Court of Appeal? Because some say, well, the IBC is well within its rights to go and appeal this decision, as does anybody, if they're not satisfied with the decision of a lower court. And then you have political leaders outside on the arena saying, if that happens, if they're successful, if IEBC, and we heard from Johnson Muthama who said, if the government, almost sort of linking government and IEBC as one. What does that say about the process?
I think there's a slight misunderstanding from the clip of Mudama thinks, I think wrongly, that the possibility of a legal amendment or is possible, maybe going to Parliament and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. It's not possible because these are constitutional provisions. Exactly. So the fear really is that they could have an adverse judgment on appeal in the Court of Appeal, and then he's saying something like, then they will boycott elections. Right. What I suppose is happening is saber-rattling, which politicians do from time to time. They're trying to increase the leverage they have around the issue that they consider to be important for them. But also the other thing to point out is this was not even NASA's case. This was a case filed by Willis's clans, who are civil society people. So, but NASA, it has an advantage, a clear advantage for NASA. So they're trying to arrest that advantage and harness it for the purposes of these elections.
All right. Do you agree, because you're also a civil society actor with Willis, that if this is overturned by the Court of Appeal, that essentially there will be no election? Because I think...
Can you ask this question this way? Can there be a presidential election in this country that is not constituency-based? If the answer is there cannot be, then there is no election.
But that, we're not talking about the issues of constituency. The issue was in that petition, is there one constituency or is there 290 constituencies?
Yes.
We all know that there are 290 constituencies. Yes. Now, if this was such a crucial issue, it was never even pleaded in 2013. The backdrop was was in May last year, against the backdrop of the removal of the IEBC commissioners. Now, should the court, and I think the main concern, if I were a lawyer for the petitioner in this matter, is that the concern for the advocates would be that the Supreme Court, it's very clear, I think it's article, is it 163.7, which says that all courts will be bound by the decision of the Supreme Court, say for the Supreme Court itself. At the same Supreme Court...
That decision she's referring to, it has been applied.
It's an article. Yes, in a parliamentary...
In the case of Thuo versus Steve Kariuki, the Supreme Court said this, not even the Supreme Court said, once a returning officer has declared results, once a returning officer has announced...
It was at a parliamentary...
No, let me just explain. Yes. Joe was gubernatorial, but remember gubernatorial results are first declared at the constituency levels before they go to the county returning officer. Once a returning officer announces his results...
Yes, that those results are final?
These are the results that I've received. They are final. If he wants to change them, let him go to court, let him lay a basis and say, I made a mistake here. Can the court listen to me and authorize that change?
So essentially, what Mudama was saying is that they do not recognize an arm of government, which is the judiciary. If it rules against them, then there will be a boycott. That's how it was very clear. He didn't misunderstand.
It's not even a boycott. It is not a boycott.
So there are no elections.
There will be
not a boycott of elections.
Yes,
because Article 138 is very clear.
Yes, but it is not. But he is not the judge.
At the constituency
he
level.
is not a judge. He is not an official of one of the arms of government to make a statement like that. He must also uphold that constitution.
George, is this a deal breaker for the election?
Willis has said, first of all, let me say this. I believe that the Court of Appeal, particularly the Court of Appeal, has stand out in the past. Ever since we got the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal immediately started the process of redeeming itself. Because in the before the Supreme Court was established, the Court of Appeal had many of the criticisms that we now generally level at the Supreme Court. So the Court of Appeal has been in a long, deliberate process of redeeming itself. It has some of the best judgments, some of the best jurisprudence, and it has some of the greatest confidence from people who use the courts. And this is to say that I believe that the court will do the right thing. The right thing seems to be that Article 138 says elections are held at the constituency, presidential elections are held at the constituency level. There could not be an interpretation that upsets that clear provision of the Constitution. If there was, then we would have a significant political crisis. As to whether that political crisis would then amount to not having an election, I do not know myself. But the Constitution is clear. The court is strong enough to rule in favor of and protect the Constitution. And I hope that IEBC will have the humility when the court rules to obey the Constitution and to obey the judgment of the court. I would also hope, in the same vein, obviously, that NASA will have also the humility to obey the Constitution, because the Constitution is clear.
Let me ask this question outright, because perhaps that's the undercurrent or undertones, that are underpinning this whole conversation. Is there a fear of rigging? Should the National Tallying Center be allowed to alter in any way the results that come from the constituency level? Is that what is at the heart of this, particularly with the presidential election? We've heard of complaints from NASA, then it was called CORD before, and from the same candidate, that's Raila Odinga. Is that the real issue here, George?
I think the real issue, you're now getting to the heart of the problem we have. We have a crisis of confidence in the public institutions charged with running elections. That is the heart of the problem.
So we have a crisis of confidence even after there were protests that were held in the country last year to push for new commissioners at the helm, because NASA CORD then was not confident with some of the commissioners.
It is systems, not personnel. It's system, it's system. We want transparency in the system, so that we don't care who comes to work in that system.
Right.
The challenge we have right now is we focus much on personalities. Let's focus on the systems. Let us all vote at the polling station level. Let's all count our votes there. Let's go to the constituency. Let's count our votes
So this
there.
is about systems, not people?
I'm not quite sure it's about
fact,
systems.
Let me explain to you. If you asked my clients, for example, they are so clear. Even if it were Jubilee Tallying Center running these elections, as long as the system has captured in the Constitution was respected, no one will interfere with it, because the voter is present at the polling station. He's able to witness his vote. If he has a problem, he can ask for a recount right there. The same voter will accompany his ballots to the constituency tallying center. If there's a problem with the count at the constituency tallying center, he has an opportunity, because the boxes are still there. They can say, what you are announcing for this polling station is not correct. Those are the boxes. Please, can you verify the count?
So it's about systems, not personalities?
The challenge is, we are breaking a system by removing the voter. Remember, this voter cast his ballot, counted his votes at the polling station, went to the constituency tallying center, counted his votes, and declared them. Then you remove the voter completely from the electoral process. And you're saying, let's go to Nairobi.
Okay.
So that between the constituency and Nairobi, anything can happen. We don't have any accountability mechanisms.
I think it's absolutely very clear. By the way, this process doesn't stop at the Court of Appeal. It will then, either party can go up, because the right of appeal is an automatic right when it comes to the interpretation of the Constitution application to the Supreme Court. Now, what is very clear as I listen to this argument is that actually there are people in this country who, one, do not believe in this Constitution, and two, do not have faith, because the IEBC is an independent electoral commission whose mandate is provided for within this Constitution, do not have faith in the IEBC. That's what is coming out. And that is why they're saying there will be no election. So let us say, either we have no election, either we go back and we have a referendum, because anyway, the genesis of the problem of the removal of the initial IEBC was because of the referendum that CORD wanted to hold, which was rejected for whatever grounds by the then IEBC. Okay? So let us call...
Not IEBC. Listen, you're confusing personalities and the institution.
Okay.
It was talk about commissioners. Then these are individuals.
Yeah, I can't talk about they were commissioners of the IEBC. A constitution exists with people. How do I mix the two?
Okay. All right. Let's allow Jennifer to finish her point.
So let us be very clear. We don't have faith. We no longer have faith in this Constitution. We no longer have faith in the IEBC to declare the presidential results. We no longer have faith in one of the arms of government, which is the judiciary, because that is what is coming out. We don't have faith in the Court of Appeal.
What about Willis's statement about systems and trying to strengthen the systems outside of personalities, so that whoever is at the helm of the commission, regardless of that, their argument is that if this is a system and this is what we're saying we're putting in place to strengthen those structures and systems
yes,
to
it's
ensure
okay,
a fair, credible
strengthen
election.
the system. But I have quoted time and time again, and I can be accused of confusing the issues or not understanding the issues or being ill-advised. I'm reading it to you verbatim. Who has the authority to declare the presidential results? Now, if they want to argue, and we want to split hairs here and say that it means the polling, the returning officer at constituency level, it would have been here in black and white.
So in your interpretation of
it's
the
not in my interpretation, it's what is
let
there
me
in
just,
black
let me just
and
refine
white.
black and
Okay.
white. Let me just refine
In black and white.
All right,
The
please.
votes,
Allow me,
86B, the votes cast are counted.
Where are you, 86?
86B.
Okay. All right.
The votes cast are counted, tabulated, and the results announced promptly by the presiding officer at each polling station.
I think we have that
Then
as well.
see,
Perhaps that can be shown.
the
so that our
results
viewers
from the
can follow.
polling
should also show
stations
86,
are
3C.
openly and accurately
Not 86,
collected
but
and
138.
promptly announced by the returning officer. Our
Sure,
petition was
sure.
simply giving effect, breathing life to these provisions. We are simply saying, once you vote at your polling station, you must count it openly, then announce it promptly.
Which has been-
then from
which
there,
has been upheld
you go
in
to
decisions.
then you
Okay.
go to the
Yeah.
constituency. Again, at the constituency, tally it publicly. Then you promptly announce. And that's why I said, maybe Jennifer does not know what are the legal issues in the petition I was prosecuting. Our petition did not at any given time try to stop the IEBC from doing their own tallying. It did not even try to stop IEBC.
But you
Let me
did
just finish.
declare certain sections of the
Let me
act
finish. It did
unconstitutional.
not even seek to stop the IEBC from declaring the results.
Okay.
What we sought to do, and let me make it clear for her, there were certain provisions of the regulations and the Act which made it illegal, for example, for KTN to announce constituency results when they are declared at the constituency level. That's what we're saying is wrong.
Okay.
I think
Because
there
the
was an
Constitution
issue of
All right.
allows
confirmation
you...
vis-a-vis
Your point is
tallying.
made. I'd like to start to have our final comments on this. George, as we go forward, this seems to be yet another battle in the process towards August the 8th and the elections. And we've seen quite a number of court cases and petitions on a number of issues, from voter, the audit process, to the tendering process of the ballot papers and so on and so forth. What, in your view, is the solution to where we find ourselves now with this specific issue?
I think getting rid of the former commissioners of IBC was necessary but not sufficient for building public confidence in the institutions running elections. So we've done the right thing as a country to get rid of those former commissioners. But that act has not been sufficient to give us the confidence that the elections will be free and fair. How the IBC, the current commissioners, conduct themselves, how they resolve these types of disputes, the posture they take, the positions they take, is part of what will build the confidence that we have in them. They will require to be very sensible. For example, they would have to explain to us why they think that they should appeal to invalidate a provision of the Constitution that clearly lays out how results are to be managed. And so the posture they take, the humility they have, the engagement they have with stakeholders around this dispute is part of the process of building confidence in them. If they carry themselves in a manner that suggests that they've got a dog in this fight, that they've got hidden cards that they would like to play, because the problem we have in this country as a result of the lack of confidence is that we want as much transparency as possible, and transparency is highest at the lowest levels. One of the principles of the Constitution, and it runs through all the chapters, is the doctrine of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is the idea that decisions shall be made at the lowest levels of authority. The people who are at your level, who you can see, who you can engage with, are the ones who should make the first decisions. They should be given the opportunity to make the first decisions. This is the scheme for announcing the results of the elections. The presiding officers make the first declaration declarations, the returning officers make the next, and then the higher-ups make the next declarations of results. Why the IBC would want to upset that confidence-building mechanism or that confidence-building arrangement is something that would bewilder me. So how IBC carries themselves through this dispute and others that will arise will be very important in building confidence in the ability to run the elections.
All right, Jennifer, your final thoughts. He's talked about
Yes.
how IBC will conduct itself with this one. Perhaps you can also speak about how NASA has already conducted or declared itself on this issue and what this means going forward.
I think it's very sad when I hear it being stated that there isn't confidence in the IEBC. The IEBC commissioners were endorsed by the relevant committee in the legislature and unanimously approved in Parliament across the board by the opposition and government and the party in power. That was a unanimous approval. It's sad when I hear and we're told that now we don't have confidence in them. It's sad, it's unsettling for Kenyans that it's one step forward, two steps backward. But most important of all, if we do not have an election come August 2017, then as Kenyans, we must consider where is it this country is going? Because the only other option is a caretaker government. And we just have to go back and ask ourselves how caretaker governments are formed and under what circumstances. And perhaps maybe that is what NASA wants, the formation of a caretaker government, in the event that the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court should overturn the High Court decision.
Thank you, Jennifer. Willis,
Let
there
me
going
first
to
say
be
this.
an election
Let
or
me
not?
first say this. Number one, the fact that Parliament has endorsed commissioners in a bipartisan way does not mean that commission now stops maintaining public confidence in its processes. IBC, as progressively after the commissioners were appointed, has engaged in acts that erodes public confidence in the institution. It's of their own making. For example,
since
they
January?
are running the electoral process in a very opaque manner. They are not consulting with stakeholders. ITAC, which is a statutory... They are not consulting. Let me just give an example.
Yeah.
We have the ITAC, the Technology Committee, which is set up in the Elections Act, has not met until today. We do not have any policy developed to run elections in this coming elections. While the statute is very clear, ITAC is supposed to meet and determine how we are going to run technology in elections. Now, why are they doing that? Political parties liaison committee is supposed to have conversation with IBC constantly when we are preparing for elections. IBC has not met even once with the political parties liaison committee. So what are we doing to ourselves? They're doing everything to undermine the public confidence and support which is necessary for them to run a successful election. Number two, when I say there'll be no elections, I'm simply saying you may hold an election, but it will not be an election that meets the standards or the threshold of Article 138.2, which Article 138.2 is very clear. It simply says, let us hold presidential elections in each constituency, the 290 constituencies. If you do anything that is not an election in the 290 constituencies, in my view, that will not be the election that is envisaged in Article 138.2 of the Constitution. The final point is this. It is interesting that in this particular case, you have a commission that ordinarily is neutral, supposed to be neutral. Parliament and the people of Kenya gives it the laws to guide it. It's never the IEBC to choose the laws that it's going to use in elections. If the people have given the IEBC the laws to use to run elections, Parliament has given them. In fact, for the avoidance of doubt, let me say this. The Elections Law Amendment Act, what do you call it? It re-emphasized, it reiterated the provisions of the Constitution which you were mentioning, the ones we were litigating. At some point in the course of our case, IBC came to court and said, this petition has been overtaken by events because Parliament has since enacted this law. So even irrespective of what happens in the court, we still have the Elections Act, very clear on these specific provisions that we are litigating. IBC should be very faithful in implementing the law as given to it by the people of Kenya.
All right, and I think that's a good place to leave it. Willis Otieno Ocheng, thank you. Jennifer Shamala, such a pleasure. George Kigora as well from the Kenya Human Rights Commission on this issue. We'll be taking a look at your feedback on it. Do you think this is a deal breaker for the elections? Will we not have an election if this proceeds to a successful appeal at the Court of Law? Is, as George Kigora puts it, NASA saber-rattling on this issue. We will definitely be keeping our eye on this one. And as Jennifer Shamala says, perhaps it's trying to gag the IEBC and have a caretaker government. What are your thoughts? Those are the views of my panel. Please keep yours coming in. The hashtag is Checkpoint. That is the focus on Kenya's election that's coming up on the 8th of August. But before I conclude our discussion, I need to update you on another election that's taking place across the world, and that is France. They were going into their runoff vote today. I can tell you that Emmanuel Macron is poised to win that election and may very well be on his way to beating right-wing conservative Marine Le Pen. We'll be giving you details of this here on KTN News, where you get the whole story. I understand CNN is reporting that Emmanuel Macron has in fact won that election in France, young man there, by 65% of the vote. We'll continue to update you on that. So CNN reporting tonight that Emmanuel Macron wins the runoff to become the next president of France by 65% of the vote, beating Marine Le Pen. We'll be giving you more details of this issue as it unfolds. Thank you very much for watching our discussion, and thanks to my panel as well on this issue. We'll be looking